Okay, welcome everyone. This is the book discussion group for Neale Donald Walsch, and this book is Tomorrow's God, and I will let Linda get us caught up on things. Go for it, Linda.
Okay. Hang on one quick second, if you don't mind. Hang on one quick second. I just need to do something. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so we are reading Tomorrow's God, Our Greatest Spiritual Challenge. And I believe that we are on chapter 20, which would be page 277, Throwing the Money Changers Out Again. And let's see, yeah, Mary, if you will back me up in the event that Nanette is not available when we get to that point, that would be great. And welcome, everybody. It's nice to see some new faces, or names anyway. Definitely. Okay, so here we go. Throwing the money changers out again. We've had so much corporate scandal in this world and so much corporate greed. This is Neale speaking, by the way. The executives, many of them at the top of these corporate ladders, claim to be God-fearing people. Yet somehow they have found in the teachings of yesterday's God a message that has given them the room to behave as they have behaved and to imagine that it is totally okay. Global conglomerates threaten to take over the world. They're more powerful now than most governments, perhaps more powerful than all governments. They certainly seem to be running our governments. We've shaken our heads and wondered what kind of ethic could create such business practices, such an abusive use of power. If this is the ethic of today, bring on tomorrow's God fast. But what will that look like? How will the new spirituality affect worldwide economics? And this is God. The first thing you'll notice is that economics will no longer be separated from any of your other life systems. Once again, the concept of unity of all things, the foundational belief of the new spirituality, will play the lead role in the creation of tomorrow's world, and specifically with relation to its economics. In the days of the new spirituality, all economic, commerce, and business considerations will become a part of a whole systems approach to the creation of a way of life and the construction of a society that works for everyone. Until just the most recent years on your planet, economic plans have been laid and economic moves made with little or no consideration of the social consequences or the environmental impact of those choices. Closing of plants and wholesale movement of companies from one location to another, to say nothing of out of the country, has occurred with scarce attention given to the effect that those decisions have created on anything but the bottom line. The so-called human costs have simply not been a part of the equation. But in the future, conscience will be brought back into commerce. Consciousness will be raised and awareness will increase around the issue of multiple impact. Decisions will not be taken in an environment of isolation. Businesses will understand themselves to be communities of people and to be part of larger communities of people, and the lives of whom are directly affected by their choices. And in this understanding will be found a whole new raison d'etre. In the days of the new spirituality, the purpose of business and commerce will be changed. In the current model, business exists to make a profit for the owners. Neil, well, that's a bit harsh. Many businesses exist to serve the public in some way. God again. All business is driven. All businesses are profit driven. And when businesses cease to make a profit, they go out of business. Your society and the values you have established for it have made it virtually impossible for a business that does not make a profit to stay, quote, in business. Well, that's why there are nonprofit organizations, businesses that want to make serving the public their first priority, and which are recognized as doing so, are exempted from the rigors of the marketplace through the granting of the government of nonprofit status. This allows them to stay in business regardless of the bottom line. Nonetheless, they have to make more money than they spend, or they too are out of business. Ask any so-called nonprofit hospital. Neil again, yes, but the truth is that more and more nonprofit hospitals are turning away more and more indigent people, patients, because the hospital can't afford to provide them services. So if you have very little money, you can count on receiving very little health care and absolutely no preventive care, emergencies perhaps. And even then, it's not guaranteed, but preventive medicine or maintenance care, forget it. This is God. Well, what's wrong with that? What's more important, the quality of a human's life or the profit margin of a doctor's office, hospitals, or elder care facilities? The quality of human life. God, not according to your society. According to your society, profit is the most important thing, even for your nonprofits. You are cutting down and cutting off social services all over because you, quote, can't afford them. You are providing fewer and fewer programs in your schools because you, quote, can't afford them. You are sending the mentally ill back onto the streets, shutting down halfway houses and other facilities because you, quote, can't afford them. The thought that you can't afford a civil society is what is causing your society to be no longer civil. So as long as you insist on a social system that creates haves and have-nots, you will face this problem. And as the gap between the rich and the poor widens, which it is doing every year at an accelerating rate, you can expect civility to all but disappear. This is Neil. But no matter. Nobody cares. Let them eat cake. Wasn't that Marie Antoinette who said that? The few need their 100,000 plus incomes and their 2 or 3 cars and their $2,500 big screen TVs and their multi-acre estates. As for the rest, throw them some bread. This is God. Well, yes, well, you've stated it pretty much as it is. This is not something that many people want to look at, however. Yesterday's God has been characterized as pretty much of an every man for himself kind of God. That's because the old God is understood to be separate from human beings, and yesterday's spirituality says that human beings are separate from each other. This is Neil. Well, with all the separation going on, God has to take care of his needs, and humans have to take care of theirs. If God's needs are not being met by humans, incidentally, then God has to do what God has to do. And if humans get caught in the fallout from that, well, gosh, what can be said? Humans, likewise, have to take care of their own needs. If their needs are not being met by other humans, incidentally, then humans have to do what humans have to do. And if other humans get caught in the fallout from that, well, gosh, what can be said? Life is tough. Quote, In the developing world today, there are 3 billion people living in poverty, close quote, according to social commenter Jack Reed in his book, The Next Evolution, Making the World Work for Everyone. Another quote, of those, 1.3 billion live in absolute poverty. We're not talking about what is defined as poverty in the US. We're talking about absolute abject poverty, where people can't meet the basic needs of food, safe drinking water, shelter, and where daily survival is the task at hand. This is because you have an economic system, the purpose of which is to generate profit. Well, that should be the purpose of the system. What should the purpose of the system be? There should be no shoulds in the universe. Who would be doing the shoulding? Okay, I understand. Tomorrow's God doesn't require anything. That is correct. The idea that requirement exists is an illusion. It is one of the 10 illusions of humans. Okay, so here I found the highlighting. I had a feeling that I was not in the right place. This is where we actually stopped last week, is right here. I knew that this all sounded familiar, and I wondered if anybody was going to pop in and say, hey, we did read this already. So I apologize. I don't know. Mercury retrograde last week, something. So this is where we would pick up the 10 illusions of humans. As I mentioned earlier, those illusions were given to us and explained in wonderfully clarifying detail in Communion with God. Could we just list them here? Yes. This is God. The 10 illusions of humans are: need exists, failure exists, disunity exists, insufficiency exists, requirement exists, judgment exists, condemnation exists, conditionality exists, superiority exists, and ignorance exists. Once you understand these illusions, you understand a great deal about life and how it works, as well as how to make it work. For instance, it is from the dual illusions of insufficiency and disunity that your economy emerges. The idea that there is not enough of what human beings need to be happy. The idea that human beings are separate from each other forms the basis of your entire economic model. The new spirituality will provide you with a new basis for your economic model, essentially a new reason to do business. No longer will it be the purpose of your economy to generate profit. What will its purpose be? To generate wealth. Well, now there's an improvement. It is, actually. Doesn't look like it to me. I've got more to say. Excuse me, go on. Presently on your planet, wealth is defined as possession and power. The old spirituality encourages you to have dominion over the earth. You have interpreted this to mean domination. And so you have imagined that ownership of or power over people, places, and things is an asset or part of what you have called wealth. According to this paradigm, the more things you owned, the more power you had, and the wealthier you were. In the days of the new spirituality, wealth will be defined not as possessions and power, but as access and happiness. I'm not sure I understand. We're talking here about use of, rather than ownership of, the stuff of life. Let me ask you a question. Do you need a vacuum cleaner? I beg your pardon? Do you feel that you need a vacuum cleaner in order to be happy? I'm not sure about the word need here. but I sure do like to have one. It makes cleaning the carpets a lot easier. Indeed. And do you need a washing machine? Well, I want to give you the same answer. I'm not sure about need, but it sure does making the laundry a lot easier. Indeed, it does. And yet, you do understand that half the world's people get through life without either of these things, yes? Yes, I understand that. It's just a matter of convenience, that's all. Those of us living in the wealthier nations have these things as convenience. They save us time. And time is money. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's what they say. That's an interesting economy you have there. Well, it's just a saying. But wouldn't it be nice if that kind of time could be saved for everyone? That would be nice, yes, but I don't see how that could happen, not anytime soon anyway. Yet when that time does come, wouldn't that result in a better life for all? I think so, yes. I think it's fair to say that, yes. But like I said, it would be many years before we can grow the worldwide economy enough so that everyone on the planet can afford these things. Now, what if I told you of a way that many, many more people on your planet could afford a vacuum cleaner and a washing machine without having to wait to grow the economy? In fact, what if the answer was not to grow the economy at all, but to reduce it? What if I said that someday soon, everyone could have the use of a vacuum cleaner and a washing machine without a single extra vacuum cleaner or washing machine being made or purchased? What would you say to that? I'd like to know how that could be accomplished. And the answer would be redefine wealth as access and availability. Shift from a possessions and power economy to a use and cooperation economy. Not everyone needs their own vacuum cleaner. They simply need use of one. Not everyone needs their own washing machine. They simply need use of one. What would happen if 4 families living in immediate proximity to each other decided to share one vacuum cleaner? Do you think their carpets would be any less clean? Not if they cooperated with each other and set up a workable schedule for the use of the vacuum. With a little bit of cooperation, I think it wouldn't make any difference at all. Could they do the same thing with a washing machine? Certainly. People living in apartment buildings do it all the time. Good. Now, if 4 families living in close proximity to each other each owned their own vacuum cleaner but agreed among themselves that when it was time to replace it, they would hold off and share each other's vacuum cleaner until they were all down to one, what do you think might be done with the 3 remaining vacuum cleaners that had been manufactured to meet the former demand? Well, that's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about it. Could not the manufacturing surplus be used to supply vacuums for 12 other families if they shared them in the same way? And if all the families in a group of 4 sharing the cost of just one machine, wouldn't that make the vacuum 75% more affordable? Yes, I see that it would. Now, if you had 14 families in an apartment complex, each agreeing to schedule their use of the vacuum one day a week for either an afternoon or a morning, that vacuum would go a long way, would it not? It would not be sitting in a closet most of the time, and it would cost a tiny fraction for the use of each of those families to afford its use. Right now, how many human beings are paying an enormous amount of money to own and hold things most of which they use a tiny fraction of the time they own it? Well, Well, in the consumer-oriented society of the Western world, everyone is trained to think that they have their own personal copy of everything. But in some of the less wealthy regions of the world, read that as 2/3 of the world, yes, in 2/3 of the world, 4 families would be grateful beyond measure to be able to have the use of one vacuum cleaner between them, or one washing machine, or one car. You see, you are now getting it. There is more than enough of everything for everyone to live quite happily. It is simply a matter of changing your every man for himself economy for a highest good for all economy. This whole idea that we are now discussing was articulated in The Next Evolution, the book by Jack Reed that I mentioned a moment ago. Yes, I gave Jack those inspirations. Jack was inspired to write that the world could change overnight if humanity simply changed its definition of wealth from possession and power to use and cooperation. And he is right. This is Neil. But if this would work so well, why aren't people doing it? At least in economically depressed areas of the world, where people cannot afford their own single copy of an item. The ethic of use and cooperation has not been widely taught in those places any more than it is widely taught in more developed nations. In addition, people aspire to what they see, even in the poorest of countries. While they may not have many other luxuries, television has become ubiquitous. Precisely because they do not have much disposable income to spend on other forms of entertainment, many people watch television during whatever leisure moments they have. There they receive messages about what the good life is from the Western sitcoms and dramas. It is only natural for them to desire the same kind of lifestyle. You can expect them to aspire to nothing less. No, for something like this to work, the wealthy must redefine wealth, not the poverty-stricken. Those who are setting the standards must set a new standard. You mean we can't just say, hey, those of you over there can afford this, but for those of you who cannot, just share resources? Do as I say, don't do as I do, is that it? Well, it was a thought, not a good one. If you want the world to change, you have to be the change you want to see. Besides, there are other reasons for moving to the use of rather than ownership of model. An economy based on such a model would also produce many beneficial side effects, such as fewer things would have to be manufactured. Everyone on the planet could have the use of many things that are now used only by individuals or single families and are sitting idle 95% of the time. People whose business depends on using things wisely understand this perfectly. Ask any airline how many hours of, quote, downtime its airplanes have each day. You will find that there is hardly a moment when they are not in use. This requires that each airplane be built to very high specifications so that it can take such continuous use and still operate efficiently. It also allows fewer planes to be made. No airplane in the world or airline in the world could afford to have enough planes in its fleet to use each of them 5% of the time. That would be absurd. Yet that is precisely this kind of absurdity that compromises your Western world's economic model. This is Neil. I don't think most people have ever thought about it this way. God, when human society embraces tomorrow's God, many more people will think about it that way, just as Jack Reed did. Why? How will a new spiritual model make us think about a new economic model? God, the new spiritual model will declare that you are all one. It will also say there's enough. If you take those messages to heart, you will begin at once to devise ways of treating everyone as you would want to be treated, giving everyone what you would want to be given, and providing everyone with what you would want to be provided. And you will quickly realize that the easiest way to do this is not to keep trying to grow the world's economy in a never-ending upward spiral, attempting to make it impossible for everyone to afford to own the same things, but rather to provide everyone with access to and use of the same things. This requires producing fewer consumer items per person on your planet, and that has wonderfully productive implications for your ecology. This is Neil. I can see how it would. Less stuff being manufactured means less pollution of our air and water, and fewer things being tossed into the landfills, for one thing. As we convert from our current disposable society to a maximum use community of human beings sharing resources, we will find ourselves husbanding all of those resources, using them much more wisely and more equitably. You have got it precisely, and that is just the surface of it. Humanity will be practicing, this is Neil, at last what my friend Dennis Weaver, the actor and environmentalist, calls ecolonomics. I don't know how to say it. Ecology and economics together. Dennis coined that word, combining ecology and economics. Then he founded the Institute of Ecolonomics to support the creation of a sustainable future by marrying our ecology and our economy in just the way of whole systems approach that you are saying the new spirituality will inspire. This is God. Dennis Weaver's idea is an excellent one and an example of the kind of forward thinking that emerges from true visionaries. If people have access to and use of the things they feel they need, they can live their lives very happily. And in the end, that is wealth. This is Neil. This sounds a lot like the voluntary simplicity movement that Dwayne Elgin started, practically single-handedly some years ago with his book by the same name. It feels like the essence of the statement, live simply, so that others may simply live. Indeed. Okay, so the new spirituality will shift humanity from an everyone for themselves model to what Reed calls a highest good for all model, out of the foundational thought that we are all one. It will cause us to do business for a whole new reason, not to create profit, but to create wealth. And it will also cause us to redefine wealth. This is God. Yes, this is what the future holds. This is what happens in all maturing societies. And your society is just now beginning to mature. It is moving out of its adolescence. And helping us along these lines have been wonderful teachers and leaders, such as the late Robert Theobald, who wrote Reworking Success. I knew Robert well and considered him to be an extraordinarily sophisticated thinker on the economy and its social implications. Another such thinker is Rabbi Michael Lerner, who has been urging all of us for quite some time now to create a new bottom line in business and in the world at large. His book, Spirit Matters, is an exciting and inspiring articulation of new spirituality principles as they relate to commerce. Are there any other ways that it will affect the world's economy? Could we just have an overview here? This is God. In the days of the new spirituality, the economy will be transparent, just as I saw transparency in politics. Yes, there will be no secrets, no under-the-table dealings, no creative accounting. Everyone will know everything about everyone. There will be no reason for secrets, no motivation, since you will come from oneness in everything you do to provide true wealth, equal access for everyone to what is desired to live a good life, and a higher possibility of happiness for everyone as a result of that. With the purpose of the economy thus changed and the definition of wealth in that way altered, the idea of keeping any piece of economic data from anybody else in order to produce economic gain will seem primitive, childish, and completely inappropriate. This is Neil. In Conversations with God, Book 2, you talked about such business practices as placing two numbers on every price tag, your cost, our cost / your price, so that consumers would know at the point of purchase that a company's per unit profit margin is. Also, sending around to all employees within a company a sheet each month indicating the to-the-penny salaries and benefits of each person employed. This is God. Yes, and that is some of what I mean when I say that business and the economy will become transparent. Knowledge is power, and tomorrow's God will constantly encourage the movement of power from the hands of the select few to the hands of the many. As I said before, and as you will see this theme repeated throughout any serious discussion of new spirituality, in the days of the new spirituality, the economy will be localized. This is a carrying forward of the theme just mentioned. The most effective way to move economic power from the select few to the many is through decentralization. Neil, so instead of creating one massive economy, create lots of little economies all over the place. Exactly. Jack Reed suggested that in the future we may see self-contained communities forming in which most, if not all, of the needs and desires of those who live there are met by those who live there. New sources of energy, such as wind and solar, will make it unnecessary to leave any community to acquire energy. With fewer acres taken up by manufacturing plants, since manufacturing will be dramatically reduced under the mutual access, use, and cooperation economic model, more land will be again available for growing food within each economy, within each community. We won't have to get all our fruit from California or our string beans from Venezuela. Local laws could be passed allowing for the planting and cultivation of hemp for use in 100 ways as a replace for pulp products now obtained by cutting down trees, as rope and canvas of the strongest sort, and as cloth for clothing of every kind, to name just a few of the products that may be derived from this source. Local currencies and barter systems used strictly for exchanges within a given community could not take millions of people off the economic grid for the most part. This is God. The specifics of humanity's strategies for localizing economies in the future will be many and varied, but you are right about this much. As soon as people no longer are dependent for their survival, food, clothing, shelter, energy, on some distant source, they instantly have more control over their lives. This in turn invariably produces greater freedom and a higher quality of life. The message of the new spirituality is that need is an illusion. The idea that need exists, together with the consumer culture that drives people into a bigger, better, more mentality, has done more than any other single thought to keep humans in bondage to manufacturers, corporations, politicians, energy suppliers, and others.
Linda, your connection is broken.
I was not having issues with that, but that does not mean that others aren't.
Can you hear her?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could hear.
I could hear her fine.
Oh, it's my problem then. Sorry.
No worries.
I'll pick up again.
Okay.
This in turn invariably produces greater freedom and a higher quality of life. The message of the new spirituality is that need is an illusion. The idea that need exists, together with the consumer culture that drives people into a bigger, better, more mentality, has done more than any other single thought to keep humans in bondage to manufacturers, corporations, politicians, energy suppliers, and others who they feel are the only ones who can provide them with what they need to be happy. Embracing tomorrow's God, who says you need nothing and encourages you to experience that, will change all this. I'm remembering that you said earlier that humanity's greatest weakness is dependency. That is correct. The new spirituality will cause a greater sense of self-reliance to emerge. Individuals will take greater responsibility for their lives, and so will groups of people banding together for the common good. And there are still other economic impacts that the new spirituality will create. In the days of the new spirituality, there will be no more disproportionate holding of wealth and resources, and abject poverty will no longer be allowed to exist. Gone will be the days when a tiny percentage of people control a huge percentage of the world's money and resources. In the days of the new spirituality, it will be recognized that every human being has a right to the basics of life and the ability to survive. Economic tools, such as a guaranteed minimum income, affordable basic housing, access to preventative medicine, education for everyone as far as their mind and not just their money can take them, truly equal employment and advancement opportunities, and similar remedies will make it possible for society to eliminate much suffering, misery, and hopelessness. And these other remedies are available today. In the future, the embracing of tomorrow's God will make it impossible to ignore them and will eliminate the need for humanity to maintain the profit/survival mentality that has characterized its economic activities for millennia. In the days of the new spirituality, it will be recognized that natural resources belong to all. It will seem preposterous to everyone that a nation or an individual could claim ownership or control over the planet's natural resources simply by virtue of their location. Precious resources, such as trees, which supply the world's oxygen after all, minerals, oil, and water will be viewed as common holdings, owned by all humankind, to be used by all humankind for the highest benefit of all humankind. What all this seems to come down to is that in the future, the new spirituality will get us out of the rat race. Yes, that's a good characterization. That's a good catchphrase summary. Great, because the problem with the rat race is even if you win, you're still a rat. End of chapter. How timely.
Thank you. Yes, it's very timely. Thought about that several times while you were reading. Who would like to start with a comment or question? Well, I'm just going to throw out there that in agreement with Linda, that it's very timely. With all the things that were mentioned, everything from vacuum cleaners to other products that, you know, how often are they sitting in closets as opposed to being used? And then the comparison of the aircraft is used all the time, but they're made so much better because if you didn't make the vacuum cleaners better, they would never last between 4 families, probably more than a couple of months. So it's really a matter of rethinking, and I'm just summarizing here for myself out loud. It's a matter of rethinking how and what we do. Over.
Well, and I think too, I think when you move into a more shared economy and you're doing things like sharing a resource, all of a sudden, I think people will start to take better care of that resource as well. Like if 4 families are sharing it, no family wants to be the one that broke it. Whereas if it's just your vacuum and, you know, you're in this mentality that we have now, if it breaks, I'll just buy another one. But I think there's a whole, you know, really recalibrating of values and of actions that is being called forth here. Over.
Well, and also a recalibrating on the part of the manufacturers, which was kind of mentioned, because nowadays so many things are built with the idea that it's going to break and you're going to buy a new one, because that's how the companies make their money when we buy new ones. You know, if they make one that lasts forever, they're not making as much money as if they make one that breaks every 2 years. So it's definitely a reimagining of the whole mentality around stuff.
Well, what I find, go ahead, Linda.
No, you go ahead, Shabana.
Sorry, I'll be quick. What's shocking me is that in Canada, you can no longer replace your, you can't replace the parts for fridges and, you know, other appliances. I mean, there's planned obsolescence, you know, as soon as the warranty ends, yep, you know, the appliance stops working, but now you can't even replace the parts. There's no law here in Canada that says you can, that the companies are required to let you repair the item. I don't know if that's true in, hi Anne, nice to see you. Is that true in England or the US?
Well, we have some consumer protection laws for sure. I don't know that there's laws that say You have to have replacement parts, though. And that is a really good point that Mary brought up, because this has been something that I've watched as a business owner, because we have to buy appliances, big washing machines, big dryers, that there used to be a thing in our country called durable goods. And those used to be the things like washing machines and dryers, and they lasted 30 years or longer. And that's definitely true. They're not built that way anymore. They fall apart. They break when they're brand new half the time. Over.
Well, there's going to have to be a big change. And, this Uber and Airbnb is generated from the bottom up. It's not coming from the top down, which is like these manufacturers. And I don't know if you've got them in the States, but we've got fix-it cafes where people just show up with their broken whatever, and someone volunteers to repair it, whether it's a toaster or an iron or, some small appliance that you can carry around. Have you got them? Are you nodding, Nanette?
I don't think we have them, but I think it's a good idea.
Have you got them in England, Anne?
You're on mute, Anne.
You're muted.
I think they're beginning here.
Yes.
But I always only wanted to have things I understood how to fix. Like I've got a bicycle, but I've got a bit lazy. I cycle everywhere, but I got a bit lazy, so I take it to the bike shop because I've got a bit older and not able. But still, I know how to do it. If I was pushed, I know how to fix it. And I like to know how to fix things. And even though it's a challenge sometimes, I remember reading about this one implement they had in China, and it did everything. Like in the garden, we have something for digging and another fork and a this and a that and a cutters and everything. They had one gadget to use in the garden, for doing the garden, for growing things, and it did everything. They didn't need anything beyond this one magical gadget. How marvelous is that?
Well, did it actually work?
Oh, yeah. It worked. It was a long-standing gadget made because people needed it. They wanted it. They had to make it work. They don't have the money for, things have changed now, but in the past, they didn't have money to buy lots of gadgets. So they make one gadget that does everything. That's good, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you came back to tell us about it, Anne.
We might be needing it.
Well,
Really?
we'll have to share it between 9 of us. Well, let me do the meditation before Linda and I get into another fight.
Oh, all
Is that
righty then.
okay?
Yes.
All right. So here we are, God, tomorrow's God, not yesterday's and not today's. You know what we need is a whole new mindset. And of course, Anne thinks we should all share that Chinese gadget, but the postage might be too much. On the other hand, change our minds, change our hearts, and let this profit motive be replaced by a loving, generous, compassionate, and we're all one attitude. We're trying, by reading this book, to expand our horizons. But as a group here now, we're thanking you for speeding up our honorable intentions. Amen. Okay, back to the here and now, everyone.
Thank you, Shavana.
You're welcome. Linda, we didn't get into a fight again.
That's a good thing.
I thought so.
Can I say something?
Please.
Please.
You know, it made me think that when we have, the unity consciousness and the love, because we are all one, the love we have for ourselves and for another person, you wouldn't want to give somebody something that doesn't work or that wasn't pleasant, it wasn't from your heart. You want to give them something that will enable them, make their life nicer. And from that kind of heart consciousness, from a heart consciousness, gadgets and stuff would be made for sharing because we love each other.
Beautiful.
Very true.
Well, and also when we come to the understanding that everything has consciousness, even the gadgets, like I don't want to treat my stuff bad because I know it knows it.
Yes, Linda, I'm so happy that you said that, because if I'd said it, I would have wondered if I was crazy,
I know I'm crazy.
Well, I'm glad that you said it, because I always told my children to treat every item, whether it was a pair of socks or a piece of cutlery or groceries in the store, that treat them with respect and kindness because they have consciousness. And items, like furniture or cars, they also respect being honored and cleaned. So thank you for sticking your neck out, because I'm happy to add to it.
Can I add something?
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to listen to this made me feel, oh my God, what a life am I living? Because I live alone in an apartment. I have my own washing machine. I have my own vacuum cleaner and dish machine, everything, and my own car. And I felt, no, I'm living a crazy life. But when my son lived next door, we shared more. But now I'm not so close to him. So I can just see how many people are living that way. So it was a very good reading, and it touched my heart deeply. I would like to change it and live in another situation. I don't know how to do it, but anyway, what a luxury life. But I don't have new things really, and I don't want, even if something is not perfect, I don't want to change it. So I use it as long as it is possible. But I could feel, no, I am one of those. So I'm not. So it's a learning to read. To thank you for this reading. Really deeply, I feel it in my heart that I want to be part of the change.
Well, I just want to add something before we run over time. Bhima, you were in the Himalayas in India for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and you saw how poor the standard of living is. And I'm Pakistani, and I have seen that people who have much less are more generous and happier because their focus is on sharing and caring. But
I
that
agree.
still doesn't mean that you want to sell everything and go and live in the Himalayas, do you?
No, I'm too old for that.
Me neither. I mean, it's lovely, but I don't think it would be a lot of fun to share the vacuum and the washing machine. I have a lot of re-education to do. I don't know what they call it in China, but I'd have to go to one of those camps.
Yeah.
Can I say something? I think what people are sharing is their love for each other. You know, when the people have less money but they share everything. I know this because when they're even, you know, very hungry, they go and share it with another one they know needs also. So they'll have it again because, but what's feeding people is not the stuff, but the love. And what
Yes.
I understand, you know, I understand there's a lot of songs about love. All you need is love, love. But there's a lot of songs in the West about love because there's no love much. And in the like in Africa, there's a lot of songs about rain because they haven't got much water coming down. So it's interesting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
My goodness, you're profound, Anne. Are you sure you belong here?
Say one little thing before we end.
Sure.
You know, we're talking about how everything has consciousness, and what I wanted to say, it kind of goes back, is like, it's not even just that. It's if we recognize the thing that we're all one thing, it goes beyond respecting something because it has consciousness and on to that other key thing of respecting because it's us, you know, we're all one thing. And when we really look at it that way, then we want everything to be as taken care of and loved and as we want for ourselves. Thank you. Over.
That's beautiful, Mary.
Yeah.
That's I was wanting to say something along those lines before we got off the phone. So I'm glad you said that.
Me too. And I also think over the next week, I think that will help us with our thoughts, and for me and my thoughts about what's going on around the world with the quote unquote pandemic. But if we think about the kind of thoughts we're having right here and now, is that I think that'll keep us with our heads above the water. We won't feel like we're drowning. What can we do for others? You know, even if it's a short conversation on the phone, whatever it is. I think that we'll realize we have more to give even of ourselves, you know, that are not things like vacuum cleaners and washing machines and that kind of stuff, but to give of ourselves to someone, I think will be profoundly beneficial in this times that we're in right now. Over.
And to just lay on to another layer on it, I fully believe that this is it. This is the time where these shifts will start to happen. Because if you look at what's happening astrologically, and I just was watching or listening to a video yesterday about this month, you know, and the upcoming new moon and the various positionings. And what's happening now, right now on this planet, is so important because it's like the petri dish for making this shift that we've been talking about and reading about. I mean, what year was this book written? This isn't current. This is old. This has been coming, right? This book here talks about it coming. Well, we're here. This is it. I'm convinced. This is the thing, because think about it. The entire planet is quarantined, or should be. So spending weeks doing things differently with the combination of the energetic opening that the universe is providing us with all of these planetary positionings and, you know, galactic stuff going on. This is the transformational time. It's like, I'm so excited. I'm so depressed. And I'm so excited all at the same time, right? Like my daily body is just like, can't handle it. Like, then that's what I mean when I say I'm so depressed. Like, there's a part of my physical form wants to just go, and my ego just wants to go, oh my God, it's the end of the world, and what are we gonna do? And yet the spiritual side of me is just pumped, because this is our opportunity. This is the opportunity that's being created for all kinds of people to wake up. And one of the things that I heard in this video that I was listening to was that the way that the gamma rays and the energy in the universe is moving, the Earth has a thinner protection. So these energies are going to come in, and they're impacting people in ways that, and those of us that are sensitive already know this, but it's the people that are asleep that are going to start being impacted, which is just beautiful. It's just beautiful. Like, we don't have to worry about waking them up. The universe is going to wake them up. We just have to worry about doing the right thing in our daily lives to support this change that's happening and the oneness that's coming.
And, you know, Linda, everything you said, it's been really thought-provoking. And I think that to be gentle upon ourselves, and I know we're going over time, so I'm not going to go long on this at all. But I think we should, because of the times we're living in, we should be very open with each other about saying, stop reading there. I would like to add something that's bugging me about the pandemic. You know, the pandemic, or I've got an idea for those who might be struggling in a worry state, you know, at this pandemic, because right now, one of the reasons I feel that this group has come together is because we know we need each other and we want each other. So it's not just need, it's a want, it's a desire. And that desire is going to help us get through to the other side, I believe. Over.
Yes.
All right. Well, we ran over, which, sorry, because I know Linda's got another.
No, nobody's coming. No, everybody's on lockdown. Nobody's doing anything.
Are you kidding? I wasn't going to cancel.
And we only have one. And we only have one confirmed case in the entire state.
Yeah,
and I'm 120 miles from that town where that's happening, and yet everything shut down. Schools are shut down, libraries shut down, Sea Life Center, everything shut down. So
yeah, well, don't get me started. I could go on about politics, but I'll just keep my little lips locked up. Anyway, I love you all, and let's just keep each other throughout the week in our thoughts, and together we're going to get through this. So
yes.
All right. Thank you for reading, Linda. Thank you, Mary, Bima. And there was Norma, Ann, Shabana. And I think that's another Ann on the 561 number. Anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll see each other next week.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. Love you all.
Love you all.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Be
everyone.
well.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.